So we have produced a report called the Climate and Food Vulnerability Index, which ranks 133 countries by how food insecure they are, based on three criteria, which is food affordability, food availability and food quality. And we've combined that with data on national carbon footprints. So this is the total amount of emissions that they've produced. And so we've brought those two bits of information together to create a kind of global ranking of countries by how food insecure they are and what amount of carbon dioxide they emit. So it's really interesting. The most food insecure country in the world is Burundi, which is a small country in East Africa. And what is interesting is that not only are they most food insecure, they also have the lowest carbon footprint per person. So they generate just 0.027 tons of CO2 per person in Burundi, which is so small that it's often rounded down to zero in many reports. And that just shows you the injustice of climate change, basically, that they suffer from food insecurity driven in large part by various climatic changes that have been brought about through global warming, and yet they have not contributed to that problem, to that climate crisis that we're living through. And some of the much richer countries who are less food insecure because they've been able to develop along a carbon intensive path, the ones that have contributed to climate change much more, like the UK and the big emitters, are actually not suffering in the same way from climate change. So it really just makes the point of the kind of moral case for richer countries to do much more in terms of reducing their own emissions radically, and also offering support through finance and technology to smaller countries and poorer countries like Burundi to help those people adapt to climate change. Well, we have a program in Burundi, and I was speaking to our country director there, Philip Galgalo, who was explaining some of the different programs that we have, and one of those is to try and diversify farmers' crops so that they're less reliant on just one type of crop, so that it can be more versatile with different climatic conditions. And sometimes that's actually growing non-food crops like sunflowers. That actually they don't eat sunflowers, but they can make use of the money and the profits that they make through those crops, and actually then afford to buy different foods and kind of survive the kind of leaner periods. But also on a bigger scale, we need to really ramp up the emissions that we're producing in the developed world. Sadly, despite all of the warnings that we've had and the recognition now across much of the world that we're facing a climate emergency, emissions are still actually going up. So there's a huge responsibility on big countries, both at the end of this year and going into next year, to kind of act on the pledges that we submitted as part of the Paris Agreement, and to strengthen those. And so next year in the UK they're going to have the biggest climate summit since the Paris Agreement was signed 5 years ago, and that will be when the pledges in the Paris Agreement will be tightened, and every country that has put forward emissions cuts will be required to strengthen that further and bend that curve, that temperature curve that we're currently going upwards, and we need to bend it towards so it's flat, so it flattens out first and then declines. And that will be the job of the big summit in the UK next year.